Traveling to Consciousness, exploring spiritual journeys to find answers in uncertainty.
What is up, conscious monkeys? Welcome back to another episode of Traveling to Consciousness. As always, I'm your host, Clayton Cuteri. In today's podcast episode, we are going to be talking about the financial crisis that is America is headed straight for. And this isn't a fear thing. I mean, I guess it's something we could be afraid of, but it's something to be aware of, because this is where our policies have led us. This is where voting for the same two parties again and again has led us. This is where the things like crony capitalism has led us. This is where the pharmaceutical companies have led us. This is where big food has led us. This is where the banks have led us. This is where the lobbyists have led us. So let's talk about what's about to happen. Now, the statistics are very alarming of what is going on. There's an article that was sent to me, and there's a big reason I'm talking about it, because I haven't at least talked much about this part of my economic policy. And so we're going to get into the big kahuna, what's about to happen in America. And we're also going to then get into my solution for it. And then we're going to wrap it up with like a spiritual underpinning of like what's happening spiritually, what's happening from an energetics point of view, so that, like always, we can mix spirituality and politics. So the article, which I'm going to link down below from the Economic Times, is titled "America Headed for Bankruptcy. Debt to GDP Ratio Crosses 200%. Every citizen now has a debt over $100,000, which is absolutely insane. America's national debt has reached a record high $36 trillion, with $2 trillion increase this year alone. And if you've ever looked up any of the statistics for how big a trillion is, it's one of those numbers that you can't even wrap your head around how big it is. It's insanity. Insanity is really the only word for it. And our debt has grown exponentially in our recent decades, with all the wars, with all the money that you just want to spend frivolously without any regulation, without any control, complete waste, fraud, and abuse. And it's jumped from $5.7 trillion at the turn of the century to $23.2 trillion by 2020. And then following the pandemic, of course, it surged by nearly 16 trillion. So 2000, 5.7, 2020, 23.2, and then since the pandemic, 16 trillion. It's unprecedented. Honestly, there's like nothing in history that could really account for it. And in the last 316 days, the debt has risen $3.6 billion per day, or about 5.3 billion total. It's just, these numbers are insane. And so as a result of this, it's a little bit more than 100,000. We all have a debt of $108,000 actually. So hopefully you weren't trying to save that extra $8,000, because of course it's going to hit us. It's not going to hit our politicians. It's not going to hit the people in power. It's going to hit the common man. And that's something that I think we've talked about a lot. And you know, I do want to make a plug here to sign up for the meditation newsletter. Hopefully you can see it down below, the 999 meditation. Very shortly, Shelby and I are going to create a meditation so that we can heal the common man. We're going to talk more about how our visualization of Jesus, and I know I'm getting a little bit off on a tangent here, but how our visualization of Jesus up on the cross is actually why, it's not the only reason, but it's a part of the reason why when these financial disasters happen, it's the common man who is always punished for it. So go sign up for that. A little bit of a teaser, but sign up for that for sure. You know, I think, you know, this article gets into DOGE, the Department of Government and Efficiency. Hopefully they're able to do something with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. You know, but I don't know. I mean, I think they're going to have to do a lot more. They're not an actual government organization. I'll have to see how that actually plays out legally. Who knows? Maybe it's just hand waving. I hope they do something, but we're on the cusp of a depression that we've never seen before. And our economic policies, like this happened with the Great Depression. We're on pace with the 2008 financial crisis, how debt just absolutely destroyed all of us. And if you want to look to any sort of similar countries, check out Argentina, Greece, Venezuela, where there's excessive debt, excessive inflation, and it's going to lead to significant economic hardship. So, we're going to explore what we can do in there. And then we're going to also talk about why that happens and the solution from a spiritual perspective and even just a practical world perspective a little later in this podcast. Something that I think a little teaser here, a little sidebar, is I was looking into the idea of debanking because it's crazy. First of all, it's crazy. And, I was a huge crypto proponent and I still am. I think that crypto and blockchain technology has a very important future in America, but I don't know if we're ready for it yet because there's this whole idea of debanking and financial exclusion. So if you've ever been to like a weed shop, marijuana shop, you'll know that you can only spend dollars there. If you go to some gun shops will also only take dollars, like cash. And then recently I've seen crypto and fintech, financial technology startups, getting debanked. So what debanking essentially is banks who have no checks and balances, no oversight. You can argue they run this country. You can argue at some level they run the world. In fact, just look up the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and how they will collapse not dollars, but they'll collapse the currency of other countries if they don't come and get backed by the dollar. It's actually very, very evil what the IMF does. And if you want to talk about institutions that are not regulated, no one votes for them, that's definitely one that really needs to be looked at. And so what came to my attention in regards to crypto, right? Because I think a lot of people think that Bitcoin could be like the new standard, right? And I think there's validity in that. I truly do. I think there could be something there. I'm not going to fully back it. I think there's a better option, which we'll get to a little bit later. But the banks, what happened with crypto when we saw that surge in 2021 and then it just all dropped off, was the banks were basically blacklisting anyone who was involved in crypto startups. So if you had a crypto company, you were doing some sort of revolutionary idea with money, which would have been fintech, financial technology. If you were doing any revolutionary stuff there, the banks just closed off your account. They were like, no, you're not going to work with us. That's not how we're doing this. And there's no one you could go to appeal it. It's completely legal, which is the crazy part about it. And it completely destroyed the growth that the crypto market was seeing. And they did it to essentially say, hey, like, no, we're not, you're our competition. We're going to stop this. We want to keep fiat currency. We want to keep the dollar alive. We're the banks. We're not going to let you get into financial technology. We're going to shut that down as quickly as we possibly can. And so basically it led to this big dry. And if you saw once Trump got elected, there was an even bigger raid, not a raid, but like a bigger rush on crypto. So, I mean, this is not financial advice. I should probably have started off the podcast with that. This is not financial advice at all. And so I'm just kind of giving that at a high level, so we need oversight there, right? That would be a good idea. But let me get back to this. Let's go into the spiritual. Let's go into the spiritual aspect of this. And I think we'll weave in, no, let's finish it out. I'm going to weave in I'm going to tell you what my solution is. And then we'll weave in, we'll talk about the spiritual aspect of this. So the solution that I propose that I really don't think is that revolutionary, but nobody's talking about it, is the gold standard. If you look back in periods whenever the gold standard was in use, currency was very, very stable. The dollar was pretty much the same. The amount that something cost in gold stayed relatively the same. You didn't have runaway inflation. Everything was pretty stable. And even more so, you didn't have something like the Federal Reserve, aka private banks, controlling the money supply of the world because they just couldn't. They couldn't do that. Debt was not a thing. You couldn't really go into debt whenever you had gold. I mean, I don't really know exactly the time frame, but you can't exactly do it because you would just have the allotted amount of gold. Now, maybe you could borrow from people and whatnot if you wanted to work that out, but I don't think debt was even a thing because you didn't have fractional lending until the Federal Reserve came around, which completely decimated the value of the dollar as well. And that deserves its own podcast completely. But what was beautiful about it is that it made it physical. It made the item physical. It had like a physical backing, and we'll get to that when we get to the spiritual component of this. But right now, fiat is just paper. It's literally just paper. It holds no value. And it can go to infinity. You can print as much as you want. They're printing trillions right now. I mean, of course, they've digitized it at this point, so there's not like a physical dollar. I think it's like 0.8% of, or maybe like 8% of the money supply is in dollars is cash, which is crazy to me. But gold's finite. So therefore, it becomes legit. And we'll speak about this a little bit more when I get to the spiritual aspect. But the point is that you now have a direct backing for your currency, a hard backing. And because of this, you're going to limit the amount that government can spend because they can't just go to a mythical bank. They can't go to a private bank like the Federal Reserve and just say, hey, print us money. So therefore, it'll stabilize our currency. It takes power away from the government, which is good, puts it back in the hands of the people. And it will just create a massive amount of surplus for everybody. You'll be able to buy more over time. Essentially, it could cause deflation at a certain point, and it probably will, is create deflation where you'll see prices go down relative to the amount of gold you have. So therefore, you won't need to work as much in order to provide for yourself, to provide for your family, to survive. That sounds like a good reality, doesn't it? Isn't that like our ideal? So why aren't we talking about the gold standard? I don't see any congressmen, congresswomen, senators talking about it. We should be back on the gold standard. I did some research and I don't see any bills. There was one proposed, I think, in like the late 2010s, but it got crushed. It didn't even get seen by the light of day. So we need to go back to the gold standard. And as a segue into our spirituality discussion, let's talk about money from a spiritual perspective. And let's talk about how the gold standard is going to fix the spiritual energy, let's say, around money. So I think if we take a step back into the fiat version of money, it teaches us that it's literally just energy. And what do I mean by that? Well, you take a dollar bill, right? And you put it on the table and you create another piece of paper and put it right beside it. You can literally see the energetic difference between the $1 and the piece of paper. They're both just paper, but one of them has quote unquote value, assigning energy to it, more energy than the piece of paper, especially if the piece of paper is worth less than $1. So you can see that there is energy, there's value that we associate with the thing we call money. And right now, in essence, the value, the energy of that money is decreasing significantly. So they have to print more in order to buy more things. And so what this looks like from an outside perspective is that money can just run freely. A big thing that happens in the spirituality community, in modern spirituality, is that people aren't grounded. They're not grounded in this physical reality. There's a lot of conversation about how I'm a fifth dimensional being and the 3D is so lame and why is everyone so attached to yada, 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 yada. And the problem with that is denouncing the physical reality of this experience. You have to realize that, yes, however you want to perceive it, interdimensional being, on different planes of existence, we're super powerful, definitely. But you cannot reject this physical reality, because then you create, in essence, separation, confusion, and in a way, stress and fear. So you have to be grounded in this physical reality. And our money system right now is not grounded in this physical reality. There is nothing tying the dollar to the physical world. And you're going to sit there and say, well, Clayton, but the dollar, like I can print out a dollar, I can get it from the bank and look at it. And I would say that's true. But if you sit there and look at that dollar, as you look at that dollar, the value of it's decreasing. So you could imagine that in the top right-hand corner of that dollar, as long as you look at it, it's going to drop from $1 to 99 cents to 98 cents to 97 cents. And maybe that happens over a couple months or something like that. I mean, at this rate, it's going to be happening in the terms of days and weeks. But the point is that it's not physically tied to this world. It's tied to whoever makes the decision to print more money. Obviously, our Congress, obviously how many bills they sign, obviously the Federal Reserve, the private banks, what they want to do with lending and fractional reserves, all that stuff. So fractional lending. So it's not physically tied to this world. And that's the problem, is it's not grounded. Our money supply is not physically grounded. And this is going to create, and has already started, the snowball effect of our money running away to infinity. That's already starting. And the unfortunate thing is that we're all going to become trillionaires and not be able to eat anything. We'll all become trillionaires and not be able to afford a loaf of bread. Look at what's happening in Venezuela. That will happen here very soon, very soon. And again, you and I, the common man, the common woman, are the ones who are going to suffer because of this. So what will happen, what we need to do, is use gold as that energetic anchor. It attaches us to this physical existence. It attaches our money to this physical layer, to the 3D, if you will, to nature, if you will. It has a material limit, which is good. It keeps it simplistic. It's things we all value. We all see gold. We think how beautiful it is. And maybe we can work in some silver and copper, whatever. But the gold standard is exactly what we need to return to as a country. And look, let me put it like this. I know perfectly well that this isn't going to happen until the economic collapse occurs. And I also know that what will likely happen, and this is the sad positives of it, sad positives. How do you, I don't know how to articulate that. I don't want to call it a sad positive. But what will essentially happen is that let me put it like this. Throughout history, revolutions occur whenever people have nothing left to lose. So if you're one of those people who's sick and tired of the government, you've been seeing it for years, you see how they manipulate us, how they convince us that it's a two-party system, technically one party. You've been seeing that for years and you're frustrated. Well, political revolutions happen whenever people have nothing left to lose. And whenever people are going to become trillionaires and be unable to afford a piece of bread, that's whenever our political revolution will occur in the United States. And then that's when American Congress Party will be in charge. And then that's when we'll have the gold standard. And all of these amazing things that I've been telling you about throughout this podcast will become a reality. Now, it's unfortunate that we have to go that direction. I'm just looking at history, they say history repeats itself. So we have to stay grounded. We have to stay calm. So in order to do that, I highly, highly recommend you go to the 999 meditation. Check it out. The meditations are okay, But what's really powerful is you're going to be signing up for the newsletter. I'm going to be telling you about when I go live on Wednesday nights. I'm going to be telling you about and let you know whenever we release the Jesus meditation, where, well, I don't want to give away too much, but it's going to be very interesting. You're going to be able to learn how you can you're going to learn how we can heal the planet such that the common man is no longer being punished for all of this turmoil that the elites are creating. So do that. And I think another huge thing would be very valuable is if you were to share this podcast with two other people. Let's say 2 other people. If you share this podcast with 2 other people, all of this will come to fruition quicker. And not only will it come quicker, but it won't be as traumatic whenever it occurs. We'll have more people who are mentally ready for it, psychologically ready for it. And when you're psychologically ready, when your friends are psychologically ready, we won't have as much pain on this planet whenever this economic collapse eventually occurs. So as much as I want you to share this for my own numbers, sure, that's in there, but more so I want you to share this so that you and the people around you are not as afraid whenever all of this occurs. And they'll see the path forward. Because if you go and look at my Indigo Education podcast, being informed takes away a lot of fear. If you listen to those Indigo Education podcasts that I have done, you will realize that knowledge, proper knowledge, will make you more calm. And I can go into why that is, but it's so much more powerful if you're able to experience it for yourself. So it's sad that this is going to be an inevitability, but I want you to be ready for it. And by listening to this podcast, you will be ready for it. So share this podcast so that your friends, your family can be ready for it too. And I know it's scary, but be calm. This is why you got to join the meditations. Join the meditations. We're going to get through this together, so don't worry. But be ready. Be calm. This is a part of the plan to bring peace to earth. So there's nothing to worry about. Share this with people. Sign up for the meditations. With all that being said, I appreciate you all, and I know that I will see you all in the 6th dimension.